Hi, I'm Abby. I have a lot of records, and this is the Vinyl Monday Woodstock series. So welcome back, or welcome if this is your first time here. Vinyl Monday is the series where once a week I sit down and just talk about records that I love. And right now you're watching part 2 of my Woodstock series. For 3 weeks, I'm sitting down and talking about the music that went into and came out of Woodstock. If you haven't seen part 1 already about Janis Joplin, I recommend you go watch that first. We are wasting no time getting into this week's record. I love talking about this artist. There's just so much ground to cover, and we're really only scratching the surface with her contributions to the Woodstock legacy. This week, we are talking about Joni Mitchell's Ladies of the Canyon. You may be thinking to yourself, what is this chick doing? Ladies of the Canyon came out in 1970, long after the Woodstock Festival took place, but soon you will see where I am going with this. Let's take this. Let's take this out of the plastic. We'll get to this soon. My copy is well, I actually have 2 copies. Or, I guess, 1.5. I bought my full copy at a Newbury Comics back when they still sold used records. R.I.P. Newbury Comics used records section, you are terribly missed. And my half copy, as I call it, I actually found this in the sleeve of a Paul Kantner record, along with the first disc of Grateful Dead's Skull and Roses. So now I have half of Skull and Roses, I have a spare Ladies of the Canyon, and where the hell is my Paul Kantner record? But never mind all of that. Let's talk about the cover art. This is an illustration drawn by Joni Mitchell herself. She completed this in 1969, and what you're seeing here is a self-portrait of Miss Joni, and she drew the view from her Laurel Canyon home into her skirt. What's really cool about this that you don't see on this jacket right here is in the scan of the original drawing for Ladies of the Canyon, you can see on the reverse side of the paper, Joni did another illustration. The image on the reverse was edited out for the sake of the album cover, but it's really cool knowing that Joni used both sides of her paper. I've looked at paper from both sides now. Joni also did the art for her previous releases Clouds and Song to a Seagull. She was a really talented visual artist. And I also happen to have this book full of Joni's notes and illustrations. This was a gift from my buddy Michael for, I think, my 22nd birthday. This is the friend that got me into David Bowie. He got me into David Bowie, and I got him into Joni Mitchell. So you're welcome, Michael, and also thank you. The art on Ladies of the Canyon, I feel it was such a personal touch. With those first 3 records, Song to a Seagull, Clouds, and this one, it feels like you're flipping through Joni's diary, and her illustration work on album covers really enforces that feel. Looking in the gatefold, you have all of these lyrics in Joni's handwriting, and on the back side we have the track listing, credits, and an adorable little illustration of geese. Oh. On Ladies of the Canyon, of course, you have Joni Mitchell on vocals, guitar, and piano. She's supported by Mike Holland on percussion, Paul Horn on clarinet and flute, as well as Jim Horn on bari sax, and Teresa Adams on cello. This record was produced by Henry Louis. All the songs you hear were written by Joni Mitchell, and notable guests include Crosby, Stills, and Nash. They perform the backing vocals on The Circle Game, and they're credited as, I always mess this up, the Lookout Mountain United Downstairs Choir. Holy shit, I got that on the first try. I have my notes right there so that I keep messing things up to a minimum. I always seem to get the really long stuff right, and I just mixing up letters like A's and E's. This is what you do when you film videos about your glasses, I guess. I love when famous musicians credit themselves as a choir on other people's albums. What comes to mind for me is St. Vincent appearing on the Mountain Goats' Heretic Pride record, and she joined in on the Bright Mountain Choir with OG Mountain Goats member Rachel Ware. If you have not heard of the Mountain Goats, I highly recommend them. They were one of my favorite bands in college, and I feel like they're a huge reason why I got into the 70s folk tradition. My god, that was the most coherent I've been in weeks. So by 1970, Joni had firmly established herself in the Laurel Canyon scene. She was good friends with artists like Carole King, James Taylor, of course, Crosby, Stills and Nash, and Young, etc., etc. At the time of writing and recording Ladies of the Canyon, Joni was actually dating Graham Nash. This will become important later. Ladies of the Canyon was recorded between 1969 and 1970 at A&M Studios, and she actually wrote the closing track, The Circle Game, the one that Crosby, Stills and Nash appear on, as a pointed response to a really pessimistic Neil Young song. It's worth noting, this would not be the first time Joni Mitchell wrote a pretty pointed FU to a member of Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. The track listing on Ladies of the Canyon goes as follows. The record opens with Morgan... Not again! The record opens with Morning Morgantown, followed by For Free. Then we have Conversation, the title track Ladies of the Canyon, Willie, and side 1 is closed with The Arrangement. Side 2 opens with Rainy Night House, followed by The Priest, Blue Boy, Big Yellow Taxi, Woodstock, and closed with The Circle Game. So maybe, now that you've heard this track listing, you'll know where I'm going with this Woodstock series. I came upon a child of God. He was walking along the road, and I asked him, "Where are you going?" And this he told me. Let's talk about Joni Mitchell's Woodstock. So Joni did not attend Woodstock. She was slated to perform with Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, but her manager, Elliot Roberts, took one look at that traffic jam and said, "Hell no, we're pulling her from the lineup." In all honesty, it was unlikely Mitchell was gonna get to perform anyway. She was actually double booked that weekend. She was slated to perform on the Dick Cavett show on Monday morning, and it would have been nearly impossible to get her in and out of Woodstock in time for her TV appearance. Mitchell wrote Woodstock inspired by Graham Nash's experience there. This recording of Woodstock that you hear on Ladies of the Canyon is not the happy, shiny, vibrant, bright, psychedelic view that we have of Woodstock today. I think a lot of the reason we have this view of Woodstock today is because of the Woodstock film. Michael Wadley, Martin Scorsese, and others definitely had an angle they were taking when they put together this film. Mitchell's Woodstock is a dirge. It's almost like a funeral march. You get this really interesting juxtaposition of religious themes, mentions of children of God, pilgrimages, the Garden of Eden, and the widespread anxiety born from the Cold War and the Vietnam War. And in a really interesting choice, the sparse production with just Mitchell's voice and the keys, it contradicts the lyrical themes of, 500,000 people all coming together to experience this thing that's a lot bigger than them. Her song not only provides an outside-looking-in view of Woodstock, but it's an outside looking in view of the hippie counterculture as a whole. Her song expresses joy, love, pain, and cautious optimism felt by an entire generation. One of my favorite things about the 1960s is the uninhibited sense of optimism. I touched on this a little bit in my CCR Vinyl Monday a while back, but my generation, the Zoomers, we have never had that sense of optimism. And I hope the Woodstock generation realizes that they were so lucky to have that sense of optimism and to be free to feel excited about things. It's so hard to feel good about things anymore. I wouldn't call Joni Mitchell's Woodstock cynical, but it's definitely a lot more cautious than her contemporaries. I've linked a superb performance of Woodstock by a fringeless Joni Mitchell circa 1970 in the description below to get a feel of what the original recording of Woodstock was all about. So Ladies of the Canyon was released in April of 1970, and the single that the label put forth was Big Yellow Taxi. So Robert Christgau, who I find to be wrong about most things, said that Joni Mitchell's voice was weak on this record. It remains a vastly influential album, with a good chunk of these songs being covered oodles of times. Buffy Sainte-Marie's cover of The Circle Game had already been released by the time this album came out, and Woodstock has been covered by many a group. I'm making note in this video of the Matthews Southern Comfort recording. The group that did that song The Castle Far, yeah, they covered Woodstock. As for other covers of Woodstock, you'll just have to stick around for next week. I don't hate much in this world, but one of those very few things that I hate is the Counting Crows cover of Big Yellow Taxi. Counting Crows' Big Yellow Taxi misses the point of Big Yellow Taxi so hard it actually disgusts me. I much prefer talking about good covers of Joni Mitchell songs though, and one of my personal favorites is Lana Del Rey's cover of For Free that she sang with Zella Day and Way's Blood on her recent record Chemtrails Over the Country Club. Lana, I love you, but honey, that is one of the worst album titles I've ever heard. Anyway, that cover's great, I highly recommend it. It's amazing to me how songs from Ladies of the Canyon have spawned both the best and the worst covers of Joni Mitchell songs. So what do I think of Ladies of the Canyon? I feel like the first half is most sonically similar to the two records that came before this one, Song to a Seagull and Clouds. Especially the song Conversations. I feel like you could have ripped that from either one of these babies. But throughout this album, she's playing with more jazz instrumentation, which is an idea she'd revisit in For the Roses and Court and Spark, which I have right here. This choice added a level of complexity to the Laurel Canyon sound that we didn't hear in Mitchell's previous releases, and I really don't hear until Ladies of the Canyon. She added kind of a richness and a depth to what the singer-songwriters already had going for them. It's not my favorite of Mitchell's first four records. That goes to Clouds. Please don't hate me for favoring Clouds over this one or Blue, but there is still a lot to love on Ladies of the Canyon. I will say this every time I talk about a Joni Mitchell album on this channel, and it will be happening more in the future. She is a criminally underrated guitarist. By this point in her career, Joni could easily go toe-to-toe with Dylan in songwriting ability, and she might even surpass him in musicianship. And her voice! Did Christgau have any idea how much vocal control it takes to sing any Joni Mitchell song, especially from Ladies of the Canyon. All of her songs from this point forward get so hard to sing, trust me. It takes a very technically proficient singer to do a Joni song well. I mean, hello, Woodstock, her voice is as clear as a bell. Conversations is catchy as hell. I love the lyricism, I love the ad-libbing at the end, and I love the addition of the flute and the sax. I can't help but wonder if the titular Ladies of the Canyon, maybe they were inspired by the people that Joni knew from the Laurel Canyon music scene. Maybe Carole King or Mama Cass. Willie and the Arrangement, those two songs are hints at what she'd be doing on Blue. In some ways, Ladies of the Canyon might be sadder than Blue. It's certainly darker. Blue is regarded by many as Joni's best work. It expresses a very fresh, raw heartbreak. Ladies of the Canyon is a bit more austere, more reserved, and it delves into themes of isolation. I don't often do album art analysis on a Vinyl Monday. Pretty rich, seeing as I was an art history major. That's pretty much what I did. But it's worth noting how sparse this album art is, and the most richly detailed area in Joni's skirt was the view from outside her window. The duplicity in the themes of Ladies of the Canyon between outside looking in and here, inside looking out, it's very intriguing. I wasn't totally sure about the middle section of this record until the ending of Rainy Night House. Holy hell. This point of the album was getting monotonous for me, but once she broke out in that harmonization with herself, it snapped me right out of feeling that way. Joni shouldn't have been allowed to harmonize with herself. It's too good. It feels like cheating. I understand why Big Yellow Taxi was the chosen single. I'm not totally sure how the Circle Game or her recording of Woodstock would have fared on 70s pop radio. A lot of this record isn't very 70s pop friendly. All in all, it is a perfect transition from Song to a Seagull / Clouds into where she'd be going with Blue. And it even hints at later releases like For the Roses and Court and Spark. This, Ladies of the Canyon, is integral in her artistic evolution, and I'd call it the transitional album. This record serves a purpose in her discography, and that purpose is to bridge the gap. My personal favorites are Morning Morgantown. I'm mad that I got that one on the first try. Conversation, Ladies of the Canyon, Rainy Night House, and Woodstock. And that was part 2 of our Woodstock series. That was Ladies of the Canyon by Joni Mitchell. I hope you guys appreciate where I'm taking this series. It's, you know, it's not like me to do something super straightforward. So what do you think of Ladies of the Canyon? You should leave a comment letting me know. I love hearing what you have to say about the music that I like. And if you like what I do here, you should like this video and subscribe to my channel. I post new episodes of Vinyl Monday every Monday morning at 11 a.m. And please stay tuned next week for the conclusion of my 3-part Woodstock series. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye!